Hi there. In this video, I want to show you how you can take the final curves of your design and use them to create meshes, surfaces, and polysurfaces, which can be kept separate or combined into an individual element. If you decide to keep them separate, you can apply individual materials to each element. You can also combine all of them as a duplicate and use that to create accurate contours. Or if you're using a clipping plane, you can cut through your surface to create an accurate section cut. So let's start. I just want the curves at the moment, so I'm going to select them, invert the selection, take all of the rest, and I'll show you a quick thing. If you go to Visibility tab, and then you have these three options at the end, Hide A, Hide B, and Hide C. They're like three buckets which you can choose to hide elements or show elements. So I'm just going to hide them in bucket A. What I have got here in this final design are a few elements. I've got this plateau represented by this green curve, and it's a non-planar curve, it's not flat. It's got some tongues which go from the top area down to the bottom area, so I can't create a surface of that easily. So I'll be using a mesh to create that area. I've also got these three curves, these two pink curves, and these two black polyline curves at the end. They're all elements of the landscape, which I'm going to use to create meshes in between them. I've also got this mound at the edge, which can be created separately, because I want to show you that you can join any amount of meshes together to gradually form a larger mesh landscape. So I'm going to work from the inside outwards. I'm going to start by taking the curve of this raised plateau area. I'm going to plug it into this Delaunay mesh script. So plug it into the geometry, set one geometry, and you can see that it's already created the mesh. I have included the curve edit points to be put into the Delaunay mesh so that I can have sharp corners with the mesh, which is very important. So I'm going to bake that mesh out. Bake the invalid object. And now it's a process of deleting the parts of the mesh which I don't want to keep. So holding Control plus Shift, I can select faces of the mesh and not the whole thing. And there you can see I have quickly created the mesh for this plateau, and it includes the faces for the tongues, but the areas where the ramps are and the steps are have been deleted. The next parts I'm going to do are actually going to be surfaces instead of meshes. When you have somewhat even geometry like a ramp outline, you can quite easily create a loft, which is very accurate. And it's similar over here. I have these two curves which represent the outlines of this wall of the ramp. I can create lofts for each of these. I'm going to use straight sections for these. For the stepped areas, it's also a loft with straight sections, but I have to choose the order carefully. So I'm going to go from one tread's curve to the riser's base, to the nose, to the curve's base, and etc. And there you can see we have a staircase. I also need to fill in these sections over here. For the landings, I can create planar surfs. And for the ramps, I can use lofts as well. And because this design is symmetrical, I'm just going to mirror these two elements around the perpendicular axis. I'm also going to do this landing path down the bottom, and because it's planar, I'll just do the planar surf command. Okay, great. So now we've got this area done, plus the ramps, plus the stairs. Now I need to do the landscape around. So what you can see here is I've got these three curves, and I want to create a mesh which goes from these three curves and joins to this curve at the edge of the plateau. But you can see that there's a little gap here which needs to also be filled in. To do that, I'm going to create a polyline curve. So now I have these curves, I can create the mesh. Go into Grasshopper, set multiple geometries, and bake out the mesh. I'm going to take it, invert the selection, and dump the rest into So now that part of the mesh landscape is looking good. I'm going to do the other parts as well. For this part here, I'm going to use a sweep to command. So now I've done all of the perimeter meshes and polysurfaces. I want to do this little mound here and connect it to the rest of the components. So now I have this mesh here, and I have all of these other meshes. And I can keep them all separate. I can keep all of these components, the surfaces and the meshes, separate. Then I can apply individual materials to each, and then when I render it, it'll look individual. So now I want to show you how to take all of the parts and join them into a single mesh so that we can do an easy contour, or that if you wanted to section it, you get an accurate section curve as well. So I'm going to select all of the surfaces and polysurfaces, and I'm going to run the mesh command. Now, if you see this, when I have the fewest polygons, I'm going to have these big gaps. So because of this, I'm going to try increasing the polygons. Press preview again. In this instance, because we're using simple geometry, I might just increase the polygon count to the most, and then we'll have a more accurate path. So now I press OK. I'm going to first group those surfaces and then hide them. Now all we have are meshes. So now we can easily join them into one single mesh. With this mesh, one open mesh, I can contour it. To do that, I'm going to create a bounding box, and it's going to output this. I'll put it to wireframe for now so I can see what I'm doing. And I'll type the command contour. I'm going to select the base point at the bottom of the bounding box and the top. And as you can see, at 100 mil intervals, these are the contours that it has created. It has taken into account the ramp, the tongues, the steps. It's a very quick way to get pretty accurate contours. If I wanted to, I could take the drape command and drape it over this entire mesh. It's not going to be as accurate as this. This is based on your original curve, so it's going to be very accurate. Alright, thank you for joining me with this video. This is currently the easiest way that I've found to get an accurate final landscape which can be used for visualization, contouring, or sectioning. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and please tell your friends if you think they'll find it useful. Cheers!